What's up, everybody? Anthony Cosenza here, and as we have teased for the better part of 2 weeks now, we've got a very special guest, right, John Sheeran? It's kind of becoming a yearly tradition with this guest, and I'm pretty stoked about it. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing pretty well, man, but it's nice to interview the same people again because we get to ask them new questions, and it's just a great, friendship relationship that we've developed. We've got Sam Hubbard in the waiting. We're gonna have some time with him. Here he is right now. Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, an annual tradition, unlike any other. We seem to talk to you every year around this time, and it's so great to have you on the show again, Sam. You are joining us courtesy of Miller Lite, and we are appreciative of your time. How's everything going? Been a whirlwind of a year last year and up to this point, but how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we're in the dog days of camp right now. Kind of hit reset. We forgot about the whirlwind of last year, and we're on to a whole another season, another process, another journey, and I'm enjoying it. It's going well.
Well, it's good to be with you because we talked about how we talk to you about this time every year, and the conversation's a little different this time. And we always kind of say, what's going on with camp? How are things? What's the attitude like? And you're hoping that this team takes the next step. Well, they did. You guys took a major step forward last year, made the Super Bowl and whatnot. So I guess now the question is, what's it not what is it going to take to get there, but now how to get back there? What's the mindset like? What's the approach like within the locker room and the coaches? Kind of, what's the mindset right now as you look to repeat as AFC champions and potentially even Super Bowl champions?
Yeah, I mean, it's not any different than it's been the last year. We've got the same mindset. I think we just have kind of an unspoken confidence, and we're all pretty sure of ourselves. We've got a lot of great leadership in the locker room, a lot of people that have played a lot of snaps and big moments, big plays, and that's just on our resume now, and we're working like we always do, brick by brick, day by day. We're not putting pressure on ourselves, like repeat as champions or anything. It's going to be a battle week by week. We got to take care of the AFC North first, and that's where our focus is at.
And I think you guys have a roster that's filled with players who won at previous levels. Like you yourself in 2014, you were redshirted with Ohio State, but you guys won the national championship that year, and then you had to reset, and then you played the next 3 years. What is, I guess, the difference between coming back from winning a championship and then coming back from just falling short? Is there any difference in terms of making sure that you guys are still locked in, or is that difference in result that kind of makes for a different kind of offseason, I guess?
It's a big thing when you have success. It's how you handle that. It tells a lot about you as an individual and about your team, how you can handle success, winning games. You come back to work. Are you working just as hard? Are you doing all the things that got you there in the first place? And, whether we won or lost that last game, I think our team, the guys we have, handle adversity and success both equally, and we got a lot of guys that are very consistent, showing up the same way every day, and we always challenge each other to be consistent and be the same guy every day, whether it's going good or bad, because there's some bad coming this season. It does every year, and there's some good coming too. So you just got to be level throughout, and that's what we focus on.
Talking with Bengals defensive end Sam Hubbard. Happy to be having him on our show once again. He is joining us courtesy of Miller Lite. We'll talk about really cool thing Miller Lite's doing, by the way. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes there. But Sam, before we kind of talk about, how things have been looking at practice through the preseason and all of that, I want to take a step back, and I want to get your thoughts on the offseason. Not only what the Bengals did in the draft and free agency to address some things on their team, but also as you look around, I've kind of labeled this offseason as kind of keeping up with the Joneses, and the Bengals are the Joneses. It seems like the AFC North is trying to either emulate what the Bengals did last year or see that they've got a stacked roster and say, to get through the AFC, we got to go through the Bengals now. And so as you look at what the Bengals did this offseason and what other teams that'll be vying for the AFC this year, I'd love to just kind of get your thoughts and impressions as to how this offseason played out.
Yeah, it was something, just to especially free agency. You just look on Twitter every day. It's a new name going to a new team that you would never expect. And I think it just all starts with the quarterback, having your guy. And obviously we've got our guy, and that's just such a starts with that, and everything revolves around that. And having Joe is just, springboarded us as a team. And then it just starts. I mean, you got to have veteran free agents that buy into your culture, and I think we've got some really good additions. The guys that we brought in from a veteran standpoint, and the rookies really fit what we are and who we are and how we work very well, and that's always great to see. And I can't speak for other teams, but yeah, it was crazy to see all these big name guys go on to different teams, and you'll be watching. I'm sure I'll be watching film and be like, no way, he's on that. He's on that. The NFL.
Yeah, so now you're in training camp, you're in the preseason, and we all know about what your quarterback kind of went through the past couple of weeks. But you also, believe, had some practices missed here and there. How are you feeling? Just a quick update on how you're going as preseason and camp is going along.
I'm feeling really good. I'm at a point in my career where I've got a lot of snaps, and I can be more cautious to get through the preseason, to get to Sundays when it really matters. And I'm back fully healthy, feeling great. Got a lot of confidence that I can build on from last year. Coach Hobby and I and Trey, we're all pushing each other every day, and I can't wait to put it on display this season.
Talking with Sam Hubbard, who is joining us courtesy of Miller Lite. Sam, you talked about it just a second ago about the amount of snaps. You've taken a lot of snaps, and towards the end of the season and in the postseason, you and Trey Hendrickson were taking a lot of snaps. The injury to Larry Ogunjobi on the defensive line kind of hurt some things, and obviously just natural attrition throughout. The unfortunate truth about the NFL, just injuries and whatnot. I felt like you guys were taking a lot of snaps towards the end there. Obviously, you guys are incredibly effective and were incredibly effective, but the team is also looking for some rotational help and someone to really step up in that regard. You've got Cam Sample, you've got Joseph Osai coming back, and others now. How is the defensive line shaping up in terms of getting some of those players in those rotational roles stepping up? We had Wyatt Hubert, retire kind of suddenly here. So, I know there's a lot in the mix there.
Yeah, that's one thing I've actually been really pleasantly surprised with. Cam Sample trained with me this offseason. He's looked incredible. I think he's going to have a great year. And having Joseph back healthy, he's getting better every day, getting more experience under his belt. We got some young guys on the inside. Jeffrey Gunter, Zach Carter, they impressed me. But like you said, we played probably too many snaps down the stretch. You really got to have that rotation going so guys can stay fresh throughout the year, because it's a long season. And having trust in what I've seen in those guys develop and the snaps that they're getting in the preseason, it's really going to help us down the stretch. I'm positive.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the preseason. You get to see a lot of the guys who may not play as much in the regular season kind of show their stuff now in August. And like yourself and all the other starters, you're not really playing in the preseason anymore. But looking back when you were a rookie back in 2018, were there any things that you remember that you were like, oh, I was overthinking this, or I wasn't really playing like instinctually? Was there anything that you remember about like playing your first preseason games? And have you had moments now as a vet where you've helped out maybe like a wide-eyed rookie like Cam Sample last year, maybe some guys this year?
Yeah, I like to put things in perspective for those guys, because they look at me now like a veteran on a second contract with a lot of experience, and don't imagine that I was a rookie too. I told a couple guys of the rookies after their first preseason game who were a little down on themselves but played good. My only comment for my first preseason and NFL game was just on the ground too much. And it's just the speed of the game. Everyone's going to develop, and just helping those guys, not to put too much pressure on themselves, and gain that confidence day by day by putting in the work is something I take pride in as a leader of the unit.
Sam, with regards to the defense and how things are looking this year, are there? You've got Lou Anarumo now. It's his fourth year in the system. He's kind of got his guys and everything in place there. What kind of wrinkles or new things might the defense be working on? Might we see this year because of guys like Dax Hill and others in the fold? Is there something new, or is it kind of just going to be, hey, we were really effective in doing a lot of different things well last year. Let's kind of stick to what we know and what we do best.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to give anything away, but I think where we're at as a defense with Lou is we have over the years, so many of us have played together so long and have the continuity with Lou that we've had so many different situations and installs and defenses that we kind of perfected over the years that we don't necessarily always go to, but he has the confidence and we, have the reps and experience that situations arise in the game throughout the season, that he has the confidence in us to go to something that we haven't necessarily practiced that calls for in a game that we weren't expecting or didn't scout. And we can really be flexible and adjust and do a variety of different things that the situation calls for just because we have that continuity and time together that you can't really, I don't know, create any other way.
Yeah, this is a safe space, Sam. Like Dax is pretty good for Wolverine, right? Like he's pretty good. Yeah,
I've been impressed with him. He's a good player. I like Dax a lot.
But it's not like he's doing anything different than what he's doing like the entire offseason. It kind of seems like he's been kind of on point ever since he's got here.
Yeah, he's handled himself like a pro. He's doing everything you can ask and hope for him. It's a unique situation with Jesse. We obviously missed Jesse, but he stepped in and done an amazing job. And I'm sure that whenever that situation plays out, we need him on the field. He's shown that he can make plays. And last night he made another big play. And I like him as a person too. He works hard. He goes about his business and does the right things.
Buckeye and Wolverines getting along now that they're both Bengals. You got to love that. I don't know details of conversations and whatnot. Obviously, are probably private. But I mean, have you been speaking with Jesse during his time kind of away from the team? And you mentioned that Dax Hill has kind of been stepping in nicely and doing some different things. Obviously, has played well in the first 2 preseason games of his career in this season, but. Have you been speaking with Jesse pretty regularly? And, I assume he's keeping up with his own workouts and what he needs to do.
Yeah, Jesse and I came in together. He's a close friend. He's a credible worker, credible leader. I know he's working hard, doing everything he can to be ready for whatever happens. And his situation, I just love playing with him. That's all I'll say.
So we've been talking with Sam Hubbard here for the past 15 minutes. We're going to get a couple more minutes with him, and then he's going to tell us about the things that he's doing with Miller Lite. But I got to ask Sam, because I don't know if we're going to be able to talk with any other defensive linemen or linebackers here. How has practicing been with the Guardian caps? I can't imagine that's been like anything that you guys have ever been used to. Like, does it feel like noticeably different?
They're different. I mean, they just look really weird, and they take up a lot of space. I don't know. It's going to be a process probably getting used to them. I don't know. It's just everyone's walking around with gigantic heads out there.
It's definitely a different look. I remember there was a Buffalo Bills player in the 90s who had one of those big helmets. I think his last name was Kelso, Steve Kelso, I think. Anyway, besides the point, Sam, what is the team? You kind of talked about it at the beginning of our interview here, what you're kind of doing, how the team's approaching things. But is there talk of Super Bowl hangover in this locker room? Is there talk of how to avoid that or anything that specific? Or is it, hey, we're doing our thing, we're getting back to business, and we're just getting started here based on what we did last year?
Yeah, no, there's no talk of that. We got a big week 1 opponent. We got to prepare for that. And then we'll have a big week 2 opponent. It's just it's a tough league. You can't start thinking about getting to the Super Bowl. You got to take it game by game, win your division, win at home. We know that we're now going from the hunters to being the hunted, and a lot of people are going to bring their best shot when they play us, which is not something that's happened here for a while. So we got to be prepared for that.
And now you got a couple practices and then a preseason game against the last team that you guys faced in the Rams. You got any revenge reps in line for those practices?
I think this week of practice is going to be very intense. There's going to be a lot of good competition, a lot of game speed reps, and we're looking forward to the work.
Well, it'll be an interesting week for sure. Not only in the practices, but leading up to the game and the game itself. They're talking with Sam Hubbard, who is joining us courtesy of Miller Lite. We thank him for joining us once again on our program. Sam, Miller Lite's doing a really cool thing where they are. You will tell us a little bit more about it, at least better than I can describe it. But they are taking actual earth from home fields and sprinkling it in barley fields in which they brew the beer. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. So I've been helping them out with this program, and I know what it means to play for your hometown team. And they're trying to make an initiative to connect fans to their hometown team. And like you said, they're taking earth from the practice fields, sprinkle it on their barley fields, and that goes into the beer. And so while you're enjoying your beer, watching the Bengals, you feel more connected to your team.
This is where we represent, the place where Bengals history is made. To honor our fans, we're taking the earth from here and bringing it here. So our barley fields are fed not just by the sun and rain, but by the pride of Ohio.
And you can, of course, get Miller Lite at the newly named Paycor Stadium. What do you think about the name, by the way, Paycor Stadium? How do you like the renaming? It's been Paul Brown Stadium forever, and your entire career. That's got to be a little weird, but kind of cool, right?
Yeah, it's different. I think it's a sign of the times. I think they're doing a good job, doing what they need to do to take us into the wherever we're going.
21st century and beyond, right?
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Well, you can get Miller Lite at Paycor Stadium, and of course, you can enjoy that beverage while watching this guy dominate on Sundays as he did last year. Sam, congratulations on a great year, personally and as a team last year. We know that more and more is ahead for you and the Cincinnati Bengals. And honestly, man, we can't thank you enough for always making time for our show. We really appreciate it. Anytime, open invite, anytime you want to come back on, we'll carve out time for you. We appreciate it. And you've been very generous to John and I, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I love coming on with you guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. All right, so that was Sam Hubbard, defensive end, kicking off the show. Orange and Black Insider. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing from him, talking about all kinds of different stuff, John. And, of course, thanks to the fine folks at Miller Lite. Enjoy that beverage responsibly, but you can get that, as we said, at Paycor Stadium, your local retailers, all that kind of stuff. So we thank them for the opportunity to speak with Sam. It's, like I said, it's kind of an annual tradition, unlike any other, my friend.
Yeah, we're pals, man. It feels great.
Yeah, we go out, we hang out, we talk over dinner, the whole deal. That's how we do it. Well, always good catching up with him. Such a great guy, so down to earth, and one of I know he's a fan favorite for a lot of reasons. Not only because he's a local guy playing for his hometown team, but just the fact that he has ascended to a very good player for this team, and really had a nice year last year. I would argue that last year was his best year as a pro.
Yeah, and it helps that he has that guy in Trey Hendrickson kind of across from him, man. He had 3 years with Carl Lawson, then he gets Trey Hendrickson to command double teams, and for some guys, it takes a couple of years to really refine your entire skill set as a player and as a pass rusher. And with Hubbard, he just gets production, and I feel like that's what they value the most. That no matter what means necessary that it takes, like he finds his way to the ball, and that production on the field, it's coupled with just, I think, a solid leadership in the locker room too. So he's everything that we've said this multiple times. Sam Hubbard is like the quintessential like Bengal in their minds, like a guy from here, a guy who's really popular with the fans, but he carries himself in a great way, and it shows up on the field.
Really well put. And what's totally cool is you could tell for a lot of reasons he was a guy that Marvin Lewis really liked. I could tell that was a Marvin Lewis pick. And even though it was in Marvin Lewis's last draft class, it's good to see that consistency and that growth from a rookie and through the Zach Taylor era. So really cool stuff. By the way, look at this one from Rob Duncan in the YouTube chat. The Roar at Paycor. I like that one. Has a nice ring to it there. So again, thanks to Sam Hubbard and Miller Lite for the opportunity to talk there. You heard him talk, John, about a player, and that player has made his reappearance. We no longer have to talk about the what ifs and whys and hows. Jesse Bates is at Paul Brown Stadium. Jesse Bates was on the rehab field on Wednesday in uniform, signed the franchise tag. I signed it a little earlier than I expected. I thought this was maybe going to go to the 11th hour right before the first game. Myself, John, were you surprised at the timing of it? Or is this just about when you thought it would happen? And here he is.
I feel like I'm with Joe Burrow on this because he was asked like the same question. And he said he wasn't surprised at him coming back, but he also didn't really know when that was going to happen. It was just, I feel like we all knew that he was eventually going to come back. We didn't think that he was actually going to sit out for the season and forfeit the $13 million that he's scheduled to make. So like the timing was, okay, is it going to happen the week before the game? Or are they going to ramp him up immediately back into the starting lineup? Because, we all kind of believe that, or we just know that he's going to start, now that he's back. And like, that was always kind of the plan. So for him, there's about 2.5 weeks up until that Steelers game. I think he's officially on the exempt list. So he's able to practice with the team within a certain capacity, but he doesn't count against the roster for up to 2 weeks. So I think they have technically 81 players right now. So this gives him time to, I guess, properly reintegrate himself within the team practice wise. He's just going through individual drills right now. And then once, he's comfortable with everything, then he'll be with the team for 11-on-11 stuff. So this gives him time to reintegrate himself within the defense, and he's not rushing it right up against week one. So for that reason, I'm not too shocked that it happened here. I guess, it's a little bit unfortunate that he's not able to, I guess, practice with the whole team against the Rams, because these are the game reps that they're really counting on, because the starters aren't playing in the preseason. So he's not a part of that. So it's a little bit late for that, but just for him being right for the season, it makes sense why he's back here now.
It does make a lot of sense. And even though he's not getting those reps, which was a great point, he's back a little earlier than I would have anticipated, potentially getting into getting closer to that game shape, doing a little bit more on-field work or being around the team, all that kind of stuff that you like to see. So Jesse Bates is back, and corresponding move, Brandon Wilson placed on the PUP list. He was already on I believe the NFI PUP list as well. Essentially that move puts him out for the first 6 weeks, I think.
It's 4 now.
4 now. So the interesting move there. I mean, granted, there was an injury situation and whatnot with Brandon Wilson, but interesting move there with the ascension of Dax Hill, the return of Jesse Bates. It's now kind of like, well, this is a little bit of a luxury in terms of potentially having Brandon Wilson. We don't have to rush him back, all that kind of stuff. So now he is kind of waiting in the wings as well. And, oh, by the way, Chris Evans is showing a lot as a kick returner.
Yeah, I don't really know where Wilson fits with this team right now because, like I said, Evans, he looks like the part at a kick returner, and he was kind of showing signs last season leading up to the playoffs, and in the playoffs he was doing well in that role. And now you have a safety group that, like you said, is 3 deep with 3 high quality starters, including a rookie in Dax Hill. I don't think they're going to cut Michael Thomas because he's an absolute menace on special teams. And then they have another rookie in Tyson Anderson who's done well in the preseason too. So you're 5 deep at that spot, and you haven't even gotten to Wilson yet. So I think this is good for Wilson to stay with the team, stay on technically the roster for the first 4 weeks. Unfortunately, injuries are inevitable. We don't know where on the roster they will occur, but they will undoubtedly occur within the first month of the season. You got to remember, last year they had an injury at safety with Ricardo Allen. So he missed, I think, the first couple of games, or 2 of the first couple of games last season. So they had depth issues at safety. It could happen again this year with Brandon Wilson, still recovering from that torn ACL. He gets time to see how the roster plays out, but this obviously makes things easier in terms of what they do at safety. They're probably going to keep 5, and they don't have to cut Wilson just yet. Also, with Bates being on the exempt list, they would have had to cut one more person if they just put Bates back on the active roster, or they would have had to maybe put Joe Bacci, the linebacker, on the reserve PUP list as well. He's still currently on the active PUP list, so he doesn't count against the roster or anything. I don't know what the situation with that is either, because it seemed like he was doing okay in the early parts of training camp just on the rehab field, but he's not back yet. And with Clay Johnston and other guys at linebacker really stepping up the preseason, I do wonder what the deal is with him, if he's going to return in time to make a stake at the roster.
Clay Johnston, Mr. 20 tackles and a sack on Sunday. Interesting article here, and I guess I could share this, but I will. I want people to go click the link. I won't share the whole thing because I definitely want this great beat writer to give some credit. So here's the link. Go take a look at that. This is from the Cincinnati Enquirer, Kelsey Conway, relaying some great quotes. I'm sure that you can also find them in other outlets as well, but found this one here. Here's why the Bengals and Jesse Bates failed in contract negotiations. This was as of Wednesday afternoon, and he basically, a quote here, "I don't know in terms of why he hasn't been paid. I don't think that's my question to answer. I think it's a great opportunity to continue to present what I'm about, who I am to this franchise and other teams as well." So it sounds like he may still be open to a potential, reunion with the Bengals if the price is right. And then also he had a couple of quotes about Dak, Bengals drafting Dax Hill and stuff. So go read that. There's other updates on camp on that article. Great stuff from her, but just kind of, he still sounds puzzled as to what else he needs to do for this team to pay him the money he is seeking.
Yeah, I feel like he's playing a little PR ball right now. I feel like he and his representation
little victim,
kind of know.
Little victim ball. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he knows the deal at this point. They've been negotiating for 2 years, and it still hasn't happened. If it hasn't happened by now, it probably won't happen. But I feel like there's a mutual agreement with the situation, and it's why, with Bates's words, it didn't seem like there isn't any animosity between him and the Bengals, and especially the team. Like, everything that he said, it invoked, like, at least for me, that he likes being here. He wants to continue being here, but obviously the price is always going to matter. It's always going to be the main thing that either keeps him here or drives him away towards another team. He said a lot of interesting things in his press conference. Something that stood out to me, because it was such a topic of conversation last year about how he was playing kind of rough in the first half of the season, and the whole contract year situation kind of got into his head. He eventually turned things around, but he's entering another contract year now. And he said about playing in the contract year, quote, "My mindset has always been every year is a contract year, and to gain the respect around the league, whether it's here, which I would love it to be, whether it's somewhere else, I'm going to show who Jesse Bates is on and off the field." And I think, to me, Anthony, it's just a simple quote, but I think that, along with other things that he said, tells me that he's in a better place mentally to handle what's ahead of him compared to last year, when maybe he had more expectations about a deal getting done up to the season. It didn't happen. He was very let down. He got into his head, but he's been through that before, right? He understands what it takes to kind of push through that. And I feel like that experience can help him get through this year playing more consistently. And obviously that will help him get the deal that he wants next year.
Fantastic point. And yeah, it's kind of a little bit of been here, done that in terms of playing on a 1-year deal, right? Last year, he didn't quite know how to emotionally handle that, it would seem, based on his own words. And now he's been there, done that, like I said. And so now he's more well equipped to handle the entire situation, one would think. And then, you've got, hopefully this works out where the Bengals are able to keep him and all kinds of different things. But you just heard Sam Hubbard talk about his thoughts and his high regard for him. You've heard Mike Hilton, you've heard DJ Reader, you've heard all of the stars really on defense, and Joe Burrow himself also talk about what he means to the team. And I love the part that Jesse said about off the field or in the locker room, or, that portion of, here's who I am as a player, but here's who I also am, in terms of a leader. And I think this team definitely regards him as that. So, I would assume, per your point there, I would assume that, we're looking at potentially a much better year all around. I mean, he played excellently in the postseason. We know that, but we're looking at a much better year potentially in the regular season as well, based on him being a little bit more well equipped to handle that. But he's back. We'll see, when they remove that designation and he's able to, he will count against the roster and all that kind of stuff. And then, again, the corresponding move of Brandon Wilson, that kind of counts as that fifth person they needed to deal with to get to 80. It was Drew Plitt and a lot of other pass catchers, wide receivers. Were you surprised at the recent cuts, John, to get to 80? Plitt kind of showing he's the one guy I felt like at quarterback that was actually taking some shots down the field and doing some different things, whereas Allen and Browning have kind of played a little check down ball or, short drag routes, that sort of thing. I didn't expect Plitt to, make a run necessarily as the backup quarterback on the final roster, but I thought maybe he had a shot as a developmental practice squad guy.
Maybe he still is, at least someplace else, because, I mean, if you're Drew Plitt, what else do you have to lose? You might as well sling it down to Kendrick Pryor and see what he could do. And that's exactly what happened against the Cardinals. But yeah, for him, it was all about just putting quality tape out there, because if he didn't stay with the Bengals on the practice squad, he now has a chance to latch on to 31 other teams. Whether that actually happens or not remains to be seen. It's a long season ahead. It's still 2 weeks or 3 weeks until the season starts. So injuries could happen. He's definitely out there. As far as the other cuts, I think you had Javion Hiley. He was cut. Jack Sorensen, another receiver, he was cut. So that really leads this 2-player race for maybe a roster spot that might not even exist. And that's at wide receiver. It could be that wide receiver 7 spot if they are so inclined to keep 7 between Kwame Lassiter II and Kendrick Pryor. And Lassiter had a great game on Sunday, just like Pryor had a great game back in week 1 against the Cardinals. It really does feel like it's neck and neck. And now you have one final preseason game to give both those guys, I'm assuming, at least 5 or 6 targets each, just to see what more can they do. Because at this point, like the top 6 seems to be set. You have Trent Taylor doing everything as a receiver and still, doing stuff as a punt returner. Stanley Morgan and Mike Thomas have done great on special teams. They're not going anywhere. There doesn't seem to be a case for either Lassiter or Pryor to push into that wide receiver 6 spot. So now it's just about what can they do as receivers, as depth pieces, to convince the team to keep 7 receivers. And maybe they do keep 7 receivers anyways, because they don't see any other position where they want to go heavy, and they would rather do so at receiver. But yeah, getting rid of or waiving Sorensen and Hiley just makes more room for those guys to really just have a classic battling out on the Saturday against the Rams. Yeah,
for basically 1 or maybe 2 spots on the roster available at the wide receiver position, you've got 4 guys gunning for him, right? I mean, it's Morgan, it's Thomas, it's Taylor and Irwin. I mean, those are the 4 names really that are kind of gunning there. So we'll see exactly what happens and what shakes out there. We did get, just for one other update, we did get a question from Tom Freeman. Is the offensive line healthy? And I do have a tweet to share from Kelsey Conway that she put out earlier this week. And if you look at this was the starting line today in practice against, today being Wednesday, against the Rams. So you look at that and you say, I think they're pretty healthy. I think they've got who they want out there. Volson is the guy who's got the left guard snaps. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that as we run down the Giants game. But to the question from Tom there, as of Wednesday, that was your starting lineup. So you've got the big 3 additions in there. And there was, I don't know if you want to call it a damning clip that our buddy Joe Goodberry put out there from Aaron Donald getting underneath Alex Kappa there. Of course, Kappa having limited practice time and whatnot, but looks like he really got in there. But Karras came to the rescue as well for the help out with the double team, it would seem. But as of right now, John, it looks like the offensive line is a bit kind of like full go at this point. Right now, it's just a matter of what do they do at left guard.
Yeah, and they would much rather have the starting 5 healthy compared to the depth being banged up. And unfortunately, the latter is true, because you still have Isaiah Prince dealing with the biceps injury. Lamont Gaylord, he, I think, suffered a calf injury against the Giants, and he didn't practice. Jackson Carman returned off of the COVID list doesn't really exist anymore, but he was back at practice after dealing with COVID in the past week. So everything else I think is fine. Ben Brown is on IR, so they have enough bodies to get through this one last week of practice and preseason. And like you said, like that starting 5 for the first time is out there, full participation in 11s. You had Alex Kappa and Lyle Collins kind of ramp up to get to this point. But like you said, no one really knew what was going on at left guard until Jackson Carman unfortunately didn't play so well against the Cardinals. And now it's been Cordell Volson ever since. And so he got the starting reps against the Rams today. As we're recording this Wednesday, he'll get them tomorrow on Thursday. And I'm interested to see if he actually starts on Saturday, because if they like what they see from him this week in practice, like obviously he could use more reps, but if they deem him to be ahead of Jackson Carman in that battle, I do wonder if he plays at all or how much he does play in case they want to preserve him. At some point they have to announce who the winner of that battle is just to get continuity officially with that starting five. But I do think the fact that they're giving him all those starting reps this week against the Rams and again, what they're deeming to be like their final tune-up before the season, I do think that's telling that that's the direction that they're going with. And for that reason, I am curious as to how long or how much Cordell Volson plays at all on Saturday.
Yeah, and obviously the practice being against, an actual other opponent rather than your own team, that's kind of telling a little bit as well. But again, it could be that Carmen's kind of ramping back up, and I don't know. It's obviously a big battle, and we'll talk about that more in just a second, as well as what we saw from the Bengals against the Giants and what we want to see, who we're watching, etc. with the Rams. Before we do, just want to remind folks, number one, to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel through your favorite audio streamer. We are on all of the major ones: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We are on all of the major ones. And of course, if you like the video format, you can always join us live through our YouTube channel. You got to subscribe by clicking the icon down beneath John and that Cincy Jungle logo at the bottom there. Click that, hit subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. You'll be notified about that. And of course, if you like our specific videos, if you watch it, even if you don't subscribe, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. And of course, leave a rating on the audio side. We appreciate all of that. And can't forget the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. If you're a Facebook fiend and you like to watch us on Facebook as well as the others on our great channel, you can like the Cincy Jungle Facebook page to catch our show, to catch Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, and of course Coach Speak and Chalk Talk. Gotta subscribe and like all of the places. We appreciate the support. John, what'd you think about what we saw Sunday night against the Giants? There were things to me that were pretty encouraging. I felt pretty good that the Bengals were up at half, given the fact that the Giants were playing their ones for a little while there. They had their starting quarterback in there, or presumed starting quarterback in there. They had a lot of other familiar faces in there that should get a lot of snaps for them. And the Bengals were playing largely backups, rotational players throughout the entire game. I mean, almost everyone was a backup rotational player at this point. And the fact that they went into halftime leading, you felt pretty good about that. Overall, still kind of sloppy, missed passes from the backup quarterbacks, some other issues that were kind of plaguing the team. Some good, some bad. I guess that's part and parcel of preseason game number 2, especially when you're not playing a lot of starters.
Yeah, I'm longing for that clean, perfect preseason game. I still have yet to see it in my 26 years on Earth, but it'll come eventually. Yeah, I think obviously everyone was looking at Volson and the offensive line in general. Deontay Smith got flagged for 3 holding penalties. I feel like only one was legitimate. I watched one back 3 times and I was looking for the hold. I never really saw it, but he got dinged up for whatever reason. But I felt like him and Hakeem Adeniji played better, or at least Adeniji played better than he did against Arizona. Smith made his preseason debut after not playing against the Cardinals initially. So you had solid performance at tackle. Adeniji played the whole game next to Volson, who also played the whole game, and he doubled his snaps after playing 34 against the Cardinals. He played 67, his jersey number, against the Giants. And I think the takeaway there is that when the more you play, unfortunately for a rookie, the wider the spectrum of quality of play that you're going to see. So against the Cardinals, he was mostly consistent. There wasn't a lot of negative reps. He doubled his snaps, so naturally you're going to see a little bit more on the negative side for him. And we saw kind of the weaknesses of Volson's game. He was a little bit slow out of his stance. Some of those quick shifty pass rushing moves kind of got the better of him. But I think the good things remain important as well. He, stayed balanced through contact. I think his recovery ability as a pass protector is really good. Again, we haven't seen him against great competition yet, but I think that those are signs of good things to come. I think he's really, really far along compared to pass blocking and run blocking specifically. We saw him more on some of the zone concepts. He got to the second level. He was finishing guys into the dirt. He just understood where he needed to be. So I felt overall, it was a positive performance. But the negative plays, we still have to watch for that. Those are going to happen. It was his second at every game in the league, whatever. On the other side of the ball, obviously Dax Hill, like what else is there left to say? Like he just makes plays.
He's good, man. He looks good.
There's 3 plays consecutively on the first drive. He made a coverage stop on a hitch route that forced a 3rd and 4. Then he, at the linebacker alignment, he recognized a flat route, clicked and closed, got a shoestring tackle, and on the 4th down stop, it was Joseph Asai broke through first, but then it was Hill on a slot blitz that kind of ran right behind him. It was in on the tackle. The next drive, Tyson Anderson is up against another rookie tight end, Daniel Bellinger. Bellinger drops it. Hill in the free safety alignment. He's reading the entire play. Again, click and close, get downhill, recognize what's happening. Whether or not he made the interception, it's up for debate, but just him being in the position there to make the play, that's what matters. That's what should matter to the coaches. And now that Bates is coming back, regardless of the depth that they have there, like the coaches should feel comfortable in putting Hill in those situations to change the games that actually matter. So everything from him was good. And then Anthony, I was really impressed and surprised with some of the unknowns at defensive line that we haven't really talked about. Raymond Johnson III, who doesn't really look like a traditional edge. He's more like that Wallace Skillberry build. He looked really good penetrating it with some of those pass rushing moves, and he was lined up inside. He was lined up outside. I think he had the best pass rushing performance out of any Bengals defensive lineman, even with Jeff Gunter getting all the love. Cam Sample played really well. Dominique Davis even had some push in the pocket there in the interior. So I think you have battles at defensive line, who makes the practice squad. Clay Johnson, like you said, he was active with 20 tackles. So it was a lot more to like, I felt like, on the defensive side of the ball, while the offensive line was still kind of finding its footing.
Good assessment. With Volson, I like what you said about the recovery aspect, because we have seen him either get initially beat or just kind of have a bad rep, but somehow he still is able to kind of stay in there, maintain, and not have it be an absolutely devastating play. Now, obviously, there are some facets to this game against the Giants where, those who totally subscribe to PFF and subscribe to their ratings, they would look at his overall score. I think his overall score was 26, or his pass blocking score was 20. I mean, it was in the 20s, something like that. And you would say, wow, that's a pretty horrible performance by those metrics. But then when you look at it, you see some of the things you pointed out. I don't think the performance was that bad, at least not indicative of the score that PFF gave him. So they're again, still a little bit of a work in progress, but there are some things to like. I did see the second level blocking that you mentioned as well. A lot of different things. And what I liked just in general, John, and I guess these are the small things that you have to kind of look for and cling to in the preseason, but on defense, it just, even if they were not making the plays, there was a lot of activity. There was a lot of seemingly at least knowing where to be, being around the ball. You talked about Hill grabbing the interception and whatnot. There was a lot of that. There's a lot of just energy and a lot of, there were some issues tackling that one wide receiver that ended up getting 100 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Giants there. But other than that, I mean, that's what I like to see is guys, there's a lot of effort. There's a lot of energy, and that's kind of what I took away from the defense. And you mentioned some of the names on the defensive line. Pressures weren't overly high. I think there was only 1 sack in the game, and that's a little disappointing. But there were some things that you could take away from some of the names that you mentioned. You could say, hey, maybe there's a little bit of clay to mold here.
100%. My new favorite, my favorite guy to watch in the preseason right now is Jalen Davis. And that's
he was incredibly active this last weekend.
I think that's the best word to describe him. Like, I can't think of a better, more idealistic backup to Mike Hilton than Jalen Davis in the slot. And I know Dax Hill provides value at slot cornerback. It's where he played mostly Michigan. But the way that he just times his blitzes in the slot, I feel like you can trust him to manage the same assignments that you give Mike Hilton. He might not do it as efficiently or as consistently, but I just see him fly around the field and be a consistent form tackler. He plays fast and smart, and that's just, to me, the signs of a comfortable player. And I remember when he first joined the Bengals in 2020, and he did not look comfortable at all. I think his debut was against the Steelers, and I remember him just being completely out of place. And he came back the next year in 2021, and he had a really good preseason last year and good enough to make the team again. And I just feel like he's just finding his own. And I'm curious as to how many cornerbacks or what kinds of cornerbacks they're going to end up keeping, depending on what depth they need. And maybe they don't need a Davis if he just plays the slot, but I feel like he's one of those guys that you just can't cut after what he's been doing in the preseason. Every time I see him pop up on the field, like he's making a positive play.
It was so week 1 to me, Jalen Davis it wasn't as impressive as week 2. And like you said, I think you see a guy who's getting a little more comfortable. You know, you mentioned he was here in 2020. He was around the team last year. And so, you know, you're seeing a guy finally kind of some things maybe clicking, getting a little more comfortable, understanding what Lou Anarumo is asking him. But that was a guy that I kind of felt was doing some nice things last weekend against the Giants. And then, you know, you talked about some of the wide receivers as well. Lassiter had a nice night aside from the drop in the end zone for the 2-point conversion. Pryor still had a couple of nice moments. The Trents, it's more good than bad, but there are still some issues there. You know, you had Irwin fumble at the end of the game there, and I think there was another one. It was either him or Taylor. I can't remember. Had one it was a tough catch. It was a contested catch. He was kind of going to the sideline, but he did get both sets of fingertips or hands on it, and the ball kind of went to the ground there. So there are a couple of things there that you kind of go, wow, there's a lot of good, but some questions there. But overall, you're feeling pretty good about depth in a lot of these spots. Offensive line, there are still some questions there based on everything. But I mean, wide receiver, defensive back, you mentioned now some of the defensive linemen. You're feeling pretty good at this point in time about some of the depth.
Yeah, and that bodes well for filling out the practice squad because most of these guys aren't going to make the roster regardless. But you know, I feel like that's a good point because going into this season, you have confidence in the 22 starters that you have. Most of them are back. The guys you brought in, they're pretty damn good. Your first round pick, he looks pretty damn good too. It's just about finding the right depth pieces in case or when injuries inevitably do happen. You know, depth at offensive line is still a major question mark, like you mentioned, but everywhere else, like I feel like you're pretty confident in the guys filling, you know, those roles in case they need to, in case injuries happen. With Taylor, man, or Trent Taylor, every time the ball comes his way, he just makes something happen. I want to apologize to him because when I first saw that crazy over-the-shoulder catch, which, by the way, if you ever put on a helmet and are trying to catch a ball that's going directly over your head,
it's so
very
difficult.
hard to do.
It's difficult. It's difficult in baseball when you've got the glove and everything, and you're trying to track it. That's a difficult play.
That catch is insanely difficult, and to have the spatial awareness of where you are compared to the sidelines and getting your feet in bounds, like it was an insanely impressive catch. And my initial reaction was, well, if he just stemmed his route towards the end zone, Allen could have led him. It might have been a touchdown, but Allen did throw the ball pretty quickly on that wheel route. That's the goal, to get the natural pick there, get some separation, get the ball out quick. So Taylor did a great job of adjusting to where the ball was thrown. And it's just hard to leave him off the roster at this point, especially because Lassiter, albeit he had a great game as a receiver aside from that drop, but he came into the preseason and training camp billed as a competitor, as a punt returner or as a kick returner, and he's done next to nothing at that role. And unfortunately, he hasn't had a lot of opportunities. There's been some kicks that have gone out of bounds. He's had the fair catch a couple of times, but the opportunities come, and if you don't make the most of them, regardless of the other circumstances, the coaches really aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt, especially because they know what they have in Trent Taylor. So, he's done the bare minimum, but just enough as a punt returner to remain in that role. But he's just impressed as a receiver, in case they need him, in case something happens to Tyler Boyd, like he's proven he can do it.
He's been showing out a little bit here. So I think that's a good spot to transition into this week against the Rams, the finale. Preseason's a lot different than it was just about 3 years ago, I guess, before COVID and before the change, the cut down of a game and everything in the preseason. Usually there was this, in the 4 games, there was a little bit of time for the starters in week 1, a little more in week 2. Week 3 was the dress rehearsal, so to speak. And then basically nobody played in week 4. It was all about, how you're going to fill out that roster. Obviously different now with the 3-game preseason schedule. And then, of course, the Bengals just haven't been playing their starters. What should we anticipate this week, and what are you hoping the Bengals achieve? We'll talk about players to watch, obviously, in a few minutes, but what should the Bengals look to achieve in a game like this? I think it's being billed as the Super Bowl rematch, but it's like, I just don't think there's going to be a lot of starters playing in general for either team. But I don't know. What are some of the goals and the takeaways that you're looking for this week as the Bengals host the Rams?
Yeah, the starters played today and they will play tomorrow, and that'll be about it. So
that'll be about it.
Yeah, I don't even know which backups are going to play, to be honest with you. At this point, and I'm a proponent of rookies should get a lot of reps in the preseason, but I don't know what more Jack Hill has to do at this point. I feel like, considering the fact that he's earned a significant role to begin the season as just a do-it-all defensive player, I don't really think that you should play him at that much or at all against the Rams at this point. For me, I want to see who separates themselves at defensive line. You have 15 guys still on the roster. 14 of them are healthy, now not counting Khalid Kareem, who unfortunately re-injured his hamstring against the Giants. So we don't know if he's going to play, but if he can play, he probably should, because Cam Sample's doing some good things. Jeff Gunter, he's flashed a few times. Noah Spence, we didn't talk about him, but he popped up against the Giants a few times too. Spence and Johnson off the edge and Davis inside. These are guys that we haven't talked about at all this offseason, because it doesn't seem like that they have a real legitimate chance at making the roster. But sticking onto the practice squad in case injuries do happen, you have to activate some guys off the practice squad. I want to see these guys get one more chance to really separate themselves from each other. Can Johnson build off of that performance against New York? Can Jeff Gunter, shine again in Paycor Stadium? Cam Sample, he's looked like a completely different player to me. He's looked more athletic in space. He's looked more explosive off the edge. We just heard from Sam Hubbard that he was training with him,
working out with him,
and I'm inclined to believe that he's going to be a little bit better. So we don't know how many they're going to keep there. We're guessing the number is about 10, but it could be 6 edge defenders, including the likes of Sample and Gunter. Can Spence or Johnson do enough to be that 6th guy, or are one of them just going to confirm a spot to be brought back in the practice squad? I'm really looking forward to see who separates themselves.
That's a good point there. Of course, I'm looking continue to look at the secondary there based on who will play. I'm with you. I think Dax Hill needs to play very limited, if at all. At this point, it's you have Bates back now. You're going to have him. Let's kind of get all hands on deck, so to speak. I think the ever lingering question is about the offensive line, the Volson versus Carmen and other spots. I'd like to see Deontay Smith. I know it's been a while since he's really been out there and playing games, and we talked about the 3 penalties last week, but I'd like to see him have a nice showing. I think he's kind of that swing tackle of the future, so to speak, for them. So there's some spots there. And really, John, I know Drew Plitt is not in the running here anymore, but I kind of want to see a little bit more out of the backup quarterbacks. And I said this on the happening headlines here, that it's hard for backup quarterbacks this time of year. I mean, you hope they just, especially guys who have been a backup with the same team for a while and that sort of thing, you just expect they come in and they'll start lighting some things up and all kinds of different things. It's hard because there's chemistry, and your backup quarterback isn't playing with most, if not any, starters and the whole deal. I mean, there's all kinds of things, but really, to me, there's been some good from Brandon Allen and Jake Browning, but it's really, to me, it's a little bit of the same guy that we're seeing out there, more or less. I mean, I think they're going to go with Brandon Allen as the devil instead of the devil you don't, maybe. But I don't know. I kind of am yearning for a little bit more. And maybe it's also just because I want to see more opportunities for some of these back-end wide receivers to try and make some plays and show them, show the coaches there a little bit of a last audition. But I don't know. I'm kind of curious about the backup quarterback spot.
It's a good question, because everything that we've heard about Brandon Allen, we don't know a lot about him, but every time he gets brought up as to, why is this guy still here? We always hear about his relationship with Burrow, and he's been with the team since Burrow was a rookie during the 2020 offseason. I think he was signed as an emergency addition at quarterback in August of that year, and he's stuck with the team ever since. So they've developed chemistry, a relationship that teams still value between your starter and your backup. Obviously, if Brandon Allen plays extended time, the Bengals are kind of doomed in that sense. But I feel like there's just not a lot that Jake Browning can do as a backup. Number one, because he's limited in his own right. But two, that relationship between Allen and Burrow is already pretty much established, and I feel like that's what they value the most. It doesn't really matter, what Brandon Allen statistically does or aesthetically does in the preseason. But I agree, like you do eventually want to see some type of promise from your backup, and I do wonder if that is going to happen in the coming years once Burrow is on the second deal. And they're looking obviously to save money, but also to groom like a young backup behind him with some upside in case something does happen. So maybe that happens in the future. For now, I do think it's still Brandon Allen, but I want to give a shout out to Rob Duncan, who brought up the player I was going to talk about, Desmond Noel, who grew up in Cincinnati. He was a Coleraine High School alum. He looks like a very similar player to Cordell Volson, and I mean that in the positive ways, not in the negative plays, because both of them are still a little rough around the edges in pass pro, but Noel's really fun to watch too. When you're watching the offensive line, he got an opportunity to play with, I believe, the backups on Sunday when Lamont Gaylord unfortunately injured his calf. He came in at right guard, and in the run game, man, like he gets after it, and just like Volson, he just plays into the whistle. I saw him on the ground in a positive way, like always finishing blocks, but he just has that natural tendency to him. And I feel like he showed out against the Cardinals too when he was working with Ben Brown and Volson with that second team. So he's gotten opportunities this year, and I think he was like the main backup at right guard today at practice. So
He was.
Right now he might be like the 10th offensive lineman if they're going to go 10, but I don't think they're going to go that much. And even if they do, Noel might not be that guy, but I think he's definitely earned a chance to stick around the practice squad. And for a Cincinnati kid getting a paycheck every week to play for your hometown team, that's got to be pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth that he got time with the twos on Wednesday here. So yeah, him and Trey Hill and some others there were out there right with the twos. So a guy that really wasn't talked about much at the onset of training camp has now kind of ascended and asserted himself as being in the mix, Desmond Noel. So good call by Rob and yourself there. Just to kind of close it, I don't know how you feel about that. I know you're usually the roster projection guy in terms of the article being put up on Cincy Jungle and all of that. I'm assuming you're going to do that probably in a week or so. But I'm curious about what you think about the running back spot. Because obviously it would appear Mixon, obviously, and then it would appear now that Evans is RB2 or RB2A, maybe P Ryan's 2B. Is there another one on the roster? And we've seen some nice stuff from Jock Patrick, right? We've seen a couple of decent moments from Travion Williams, but it's been tough sledding getting in the run. I think it's 2.7 yards per carry over the first two games in the preseason that this team has collectively netted. So I don't know if you see another running back in there besides those three, and if so, whom?
I still really like the way Travion Williams runs the ball. I feel like he's still really comfortable with those zone concepts that they like to run. Jacques Patrick, I feel like, is the better athlete, and he's more powerful, and he can break more tackles maybe when he runs inside. But I feel like Williams is really apt in what they ask him to do. And he's not going to wow you athletically, but I feel like he's just a good guy to keep on the team in some capacity in case you just need an extra running back to grind out those yards. But I wouldn't have any issue if they decided to keep Patrick for that role. It really does come down to if they're going to keep four, and considering where the roster needs in other places, like I feel like three is probably the number that they should go with, especially because they should feel comfortable with Evans as RB2, but I don't even know if that's true right now. Like not for whatever reason. I understand the logic with Samaje Perine, but obviously there's a contingent in the fan base that wants Evans to get that opportunity and those snaps. It's just a matter of trust, I guess. Like they trust Perine to be a receiver in those situations, a pass protector. They've given Evans a ton of opportunities to prove that. And to me, it's like a double-edged sword. One, you're giving Evans chances to prove himself, to change the coach's minds. But at the same time, if you're not playing Perine and giving him those snaps, is it really a competition in the first place? Or maybe it's just they're comfortable with Perine remaining in his role for the remainder of his deal, which has 1 year left. So I think 3 is fine. 3 is a good number for them. If they're going to keep 4, I would personally keep Williams just because I feel like he's just a better natural runner. But again, whoever they keep on the practice squad, I think is fine.
Yeah. Well, Bengals take on the Rams this weekend and, preseason finale. and then we get to talk about regular season stuff. So we've had a jam-packed episode talking about 2 preseason games, one that has been played, one that will be played. We've talked about Jesse Bates. We've talked about the offensive line. And, of course, we had the great chat with Sam Hubbard to kick off the show. So it's time to start closing some things up. We do a Remember When. We do other things like that. I just kind of had a thought this week, John, and it's kind of a Remember When or whatever. But if you can go back in your memory banks and your mind's eye and all of that, I thought about, is there an all-time preseason hype team? But I'm going, man, I don't remember people in the 80s that were preseason studs or anything like that. But if go back a little bit, and if you can, who were some? Remind us of some of the names that come to your mind that were preseason all-stars that maybe they translated it into a nice NFL career, but more often than not, it doesn't end up working that way. What are some of the names that come to your mind when you're thinking about Bengals preseason all-stars?
Well, he wasn't an all-star in any capacity other than the moment, but shout out to Matt Scott for one of the greatest viral moments in
Oh, man, I forgot about that one. Wow.
Had to give him an honorable mention in there.
Puke Gate, right?
Yep.
Oh, man, I forgot about that one.
But just going off of recent memory, Jake Dolegala was declared the next Brett Favre by a lot of Bengals fans for his performance, and that was fun while it lasted. He was throwing the ball to Damian Willis, who really took advantage of his preseason role. Ryan Whalen, I believe, had some preseason performances back in the day. It's always those receivers that look like you and I that end up kind of popping off a little bit.
Sonsenbacher, right?
Yes, Dane Sonsenbacher, Jake Krumero, touchdown Jesus. Tom Nelson, I've been told, looks like me, so I've always had a soft spot for him. Yeah, Kendrick Pryor right now, Kwame Lassiter to a certain extent. You mentioned Hard Knocks a couple of weeks ago, the 2009. I was thinking back to 2013. There was a battle for the fullback spot, it seems like it's an archaic concept at this point, but you had both Orson Charles competing with John Connor, and John Connor was the fan favorite because he was the more traditional fullback, and he went to my high school, Lakota West, so he was a Cincinnati native. I remember that scene when I think he got cut, and he was a little bit like, damn, I don't know how much more I could have done to really earn my spot here, but they went with Charles because he was more that H-back type of, modernized halfback, if you will. So a lot of offensive guys who really shined in the preseason, but didn't really do much beyond that.
Yeah, that was in 2009 too. They had the Fui Vakapuna versus Jeremy Johnson. Big battle there. Yeah, that's a good one. And man, Orson Charles, he's had himself a little bit of legal trouble. I think he's just got into more trouble recently, that guy. So yeah, I mean, the 2009, you could go back to that 2009 Hard Knocks and you could look at Dede Dorsey. Remember, he was a maniac in the preseason. You mentioned Tom Nelson. Remember Quan Cosby? He made he made a name for himself in the preseason as a punt returner, and actually was a pretty effective punt returner, more or less, for a year or two with the Bengals there. So those are some of the names there. I'm going to go back a little further into the early 2000s. I'm talking maybe even pre-Marvin. And everybody knows the ascension of Rudy Johnson in 2003 and beyond for, a good 4 or 5 years there where he was, a stud for the Bengals. But he, for a while, when they had Corey Dillon, we're talking like 2001, 2002, Rudy was fighting off or attempting to fight off another running back, Curtis Keaton, another running back that was doing some things in the preseason. And there was always, well, who are they going to keep, Keaton or Rudy? And they ended up, kind of keeping Rudy Johnson. And obviously that paid off very well for them. But that was another guy that I remember going in the way back machine. You see Andrew Seiler, good one here. Alex Erickson, how could we forget him? He made a name for himself in the in the preseason as well. So he was a guy that you just couldn't get rid of either for a little while there. So yeah, it's fun kind of reminiscing about some of these names. Obviously it's easier to talk about the ones over the past couple of years, the ones on Hard Knocks that were high profiled, but I can't really remember a lot from the 90s or 80s in terms of preseason guys. I mean, I remember, you can go back again to Hard Knocks. What was it? John Skelton was one of the quarterbacks for the Bengals and doing some things. And of course you had Jordan Palmer in there doing some things with the Run P app and playing ball and all kinds of different things. So a lot of different players have shined for the Bengals, some of which ended up paying off And by the way, Rudy he did have a good preseason, and it ended up paying off. But yeah, so just kind of taking a stroll down memory lane a little bit and talking about some of these guys, and then you go, who ended up panning out, who didn't. It's cool to see him make the team and do things, but when they have that preseason hype and they're doing all these different things that you're like, hey, this guy could play tomorrow against the Steelers. And then you see things in the regular season. You go, yeah, it's a little different regular season versus the preseason.
What was the nickname of the like the 1970s like Rams pass rushers? It was didn't they have like a nickname? It was like the fearsome foursome or
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Whatever their name was, they do not compete with a they do not compete with a quartet of Chris Smith, Darius Hodge, Marcus Hunt, and Deshaun Williams. That front four can get you 80 sacks in
Deshaun Williams. That's another one. Williams. Yeah, that was the fearsome foursome. Deacon Jones, Merlin Olsen. Yeah, a lot of big names there. That was a good one. Well, just a little stroll down preseason memory lane now that 2022 preseason is coming to an end. But let's drop the mic and get out of here. We've gone a little long here, John, in a jam-packed episode, a lot of fun stuff. What do you got for us on our way out?
Yeah, shout out to the best rookie quarterback in the NFL, 10 for 13 with 143 yards and a completion percentage over expectation of 13.5% against the New York Football Jets. The guy who proves me wrong every single week, Desmond Ridder. At this point, I kind of feel like the Bearcats offensive coordinator might have limited him because he looks really good for being a rookie and for being an imperfect quarterback in college. And I'm so happy to, kind of eat crow and be proven wrong every single time that I see him do well. Again, like I think he's a solid quarterback. I had some doubts about him coming out of UC, but man, he looks pretty good with the Falcons, and I love watching him play now. It really is nice to see a Bearcat quarterback do well.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of that game. The first game, I was like, there's some hit and miss there with Ridder for me. In this second game, it was a lot more crisp. He was a lot more decisive with some throws that I saw, and there was one as they were getting towards the red zone that he put across the middle of the field that was a very nice throw, very crisp throw. So yeah, I was pretty impressed with him. I'm just gonna remind folks once again, we are still representing the Pollock Family Foundation. David Pollock joined us a few weeks back. We have not raised what I would have hoped, and so we are going to keep hammering you all to please donate. This is going to be a long play here in terms of getting donations to the Pollock Family Foundation. In case you are unaware, the Pollock Family Foundation does a lot of cool work. It is largely based in Georgia and the Atlanta area. They work with the Atlanta Children's Hospital. They do a lot of community work there. They do work with at-risk mothers, at-risk children, and obviously work with families as well for nutritional information, trying to, put an end to childhood diabetes and all kinds of different things. So they do a lot of cool stuff. We've raised some money. We do have some money that we're going to pool to this from our super chats and YouTube. So if you are so inclined, we're going to be pooling our YouTube super chats to this charity, and we'll be giving out some rewards or prizes, that sort of thing. So we'll be doing that. But please, this is kind of the charity we've decided to represent this time of year. Last year, we did a lot with the Ring of Honor, and you guys were awesome with that. Not that you're not being awesome now, but we and they could use your help. They've got some big projects coming up, so we appreciate it. GiveSendGo.com/Pollock Family Foundation. You can get in touch with us and send us a YouTube super chat, and that'll go there. But please help out if and how you can.
Yeah, and if you don't believe us, check out our interview with David Pollock, a phenomenal player back in his day, and an even better person. Had a lot of great things to say about his life, his playing career, and what he's doing now with this foundation. So definitely check out that interview from about a month and a half ago. And yeah, donate if you can. John Sheehan might be more wrong than right, but John Sheehan, Scott Belton is definitely more wrong than right. So yeah, I can't speak for John Sheehan.
Was there a live? I missed that. Was there a live? Oh, she had more wrong than right. Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I can't
Sheehan.
disagree.
Yeah. That John Sheehan, he's a real piece of work, that guy.
Idiot.
John, thanks for what you do, and thanks to Sam Hubbard for joining our program. Thank you to Miller Lite for allowing us the opportunity to speak with him. You can get Miller Lite at Paycor Stadium this season as you watch the Bengals host their opponents. And, of course, you can get Miller Lite at your local retailers. Drink responsibly and enjoy. John, have a great rest of your week. We'll be back with more stuff throughout the week, as well as the others on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. Keep it to your favorite audio streamer. Keep it to YouTube. Keep it to the Cincy Jungle Facebook page and cincyjungle.com for all your news, opinions, analysis, preseason coverage, regular season coverage. We got it all for you. Take care.